Blessings.
Hi.
Ooh, hi, Ellen. Hey, Ruth. Hey, Candace. Good to see you. So glad you're here. I'm just trying to, usually we post these on YouTube after the fact, but Blessings. I'm just.
Hi.
Ooh, hi, I'm going to mute you, okay? Hey, Candace. Good to see you. So glad you're here. I'm just trying to, usually we. There we go. I was hearing the black play from my YouTube because I'm streaming that up. So it says, oh, set up professional audio and audio settings. I should do that sometime. Good to see you. Let's take a moment to arrive. And you might close your eyes. I find that's helpful sometimes, and just like coming into the body, coming into my body, coming kind of out of my head center, which is really activated through the sense doors of sight. So closing our eyes, we can just feel into our breath. Let's take 3 deep breaths. Deep breath in through our nose. Hold at the top of your inhale, another, hold it, step in a little bit more. And let it go. Be nice on the exhale to really like kind of feel yourself, let go a bit. And again, deep breath in. Hold, spin a little bit more. And again, sense what it feels like as you exhale to let the body sort of let go. And then just tapping into what your energy's like. How's your heart? You don't have to know the answers to these questions. This is inquiry. And inquiry is a practice that we use in practice as a way to awaken the wisdom answer within. So it's different from the way we are used to being asked a question, right? You have to know the answer. No. What's the heart like? What are the sensations being noticed in the throat, the chest, the belly? How present does the mind feel? All this, just these inquiries can help us to kind of close the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. A lot of times, we just don't even know it's there. And so we ask these questions to make contact with ourselves. And in that contact, we take what the Buddha called the backward step. And then permission to, receive whatever you're here to receive. Give yourself this time, meaning you don't need to check emails. You don't need to check text messages right now. And I know how tempting it is. Yeah. So pretend like you're at an in-person class and your phone is, unless you're on the phone watching this, is like in the cubby or something. And you can allow yourself to be, receive the talk portion of this, just from a body of ease. You'll hear what it is that you need to hear. You can let go of the rest. And about halfway through, about 30 minutes in, or at this point, about 25 minutes in, we'll start our sit, and we'll be incorporating different aspects from the Dharma talk. What is your intention? What it is that you're most here to receive or feel? And then you can mention the intention in the chat. What is it that you're most needing to feel or receive? Welcome, Alan and Belinda and Candace and Lydia and Ruth and folks that are seeing this on the live stream on YouTube. Candace, here to be still. Yeah. It's good to know what we want. Sometimes we stop asking the question because we don't think it really matters. But when we're kids, we don't think that, you know, because we recognize on some level the importance of having a North Star, of being connected to what we want. Yeah, here to be centered. Yeah, thank you, Ruth. So today we're going to be talking about nothing new under the sun. For you, probably you've done reading, you've studied up, you've heard talks, you've done practices, you've done therapy around working with this really painful part of inner criticism, the inner critic, which is what we call imposter syndrome. Or maybe you haven't. But wherever you are in your kind of journey with this, you know, it never gets old. I mean, it's good to remember that, meaning our path isn't linear. And we beat ourselves up sometimes in certain ways, kind of believing that we should be over this by now or something like that. But in my practice, and I've been a pretty devoted practitioner for the last 2 decades, I've done a lot of work in Buddhist psychology and, you know, a lot of, you know, somatic work in my own healing journey, and then helping other people too. I think, you know, working with this faucet of core shame, imposter syndrome, inner criticism are kind of the head-centered elaborations of, you know, what I'll talk more about being core shame, which the Buddha talked about as being, you know, represented really well by Mara. And I'll talk more about this in detail. But, you know, we get to revisit our relationship to this aspect of our mind and hearts that's deeply, deeply, deeply entrenched, not just in our lifetime, but, you know, like we can just look generationally and see how it's manifested in our, you know, in our families, you know, and so, you know, and in cultures and society, and like the way it's deep. And so it's really good to revisit this and then sense what's fresh for you, right? Like what's fresh. And let me grab my notes here. So with that, let's dive in. I'm so glad you're here. I get all geeky about, you know, these topics when I'm preparing for them too. And so I'm so glad I get to share this with you because it'd be a shame for you to not also benefit in some way from these teachings that are both old and in some ways, you know, especially in the evolving landscape of somatic psychology and attachment theory and things like that, and how that's unfolding in you know, psychology today. I'm just, you know, I'm just glad you're here, and I think you won't be sorry. So we're going to explore imposter syndrome, as I was saying before, through the lens of Buddhist psychology, or, you know, if that's problematic for you, you can just think about it as mindfulness, or which implicitly incorporates somatic maps that can be helpful in healing from this particular shade of inner criticism. And I wanted to mention too that this can be especially painful for people who have complex trauma, because a lot, myself included here, and I think a lot of meditators, for example, that I've met, like, you know, or yogis, can like raise their hand to this. There's an interesting correlation between people who kind of come to these practices, and people who have experienced ruptures in their relationships with significant others growing up. And so this shade of inner criticism can be especially painful for those people who have complex trauma. Complex trauma, which is the trauma we experience when we've been consistently emotionally neglected because of our caregivers, just being preoccupied with their own addictions, mental health issues, financial stress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in other words, too, like they're just doing the best they could with what they had. And there was wounding as a result. Like, both things are true. We don't have to be like caught in blaming anyone for this. This is just kind of the facts of how this unfolds. Complex trauma, yeah. And then let me just check over here. Okay. I wanted to mention too here the connection between the inner critic and core shame a little bit more. And what is core shame? I'm sure I have some, I should know this. I know I should. I'm not really beating up on myself. I'm just reflecting, like it would be good preparation for me to be able to refer the video for you to watch about this. But there you can, search on my other videos on my YouTube channel, Dharma Talks, that there's a lot of them on YouTube. And look for, I believe we've done one explicitly on core shame. So you can geek out on that for sure. Core shame is the emotion most wanting the medicine of attention and reparenting. It's painful. It's a painful feeling. And we've made it mean a lot of things about ourselves. So I'll be touching on how we work with it through understanding Vedana, which we've talked about before, but we're going to tie it to this and see how it can be really helpful, and how familiarizing ourselves and practicing with feeling tone and being mindful of feeling tone can really be an elixir for navigating and being with, like kind of tending to and bearing our own sort of, big feelings that are a reminder of our own, like our own little one. We all have one. You can think about it that way or not. If it's helpful, then please do. We all have big feelings, and however we've been kind of taught to be with those feelings shows up, now. And so we actually really do have an opportunity with core shame to reparent. And as is true with any kind of CPTSD, relational wounding in this arena, really, really helpful, if not essential, to just, to find somebody who you can talk to, who you feel listens without judgment and is someone you can really relax with and tell the truth to. I don't think there's that one-on-one is so medicinal and healing in terms too of meeting the needs of that little one who it's just really helpful because we're pack animals and we're relational beings to have another person whom we feel loves us just as we are in the midst of whatever it is that we might be experiencing shame around. And this is how shame and core shame is worked with and healed. Healed, not meaning we get rid of it ever, but that we're able to be happy and peaceful and live a good life and enjoy our lives and love people well with it. Imagine that. I want to talk about too, which is something I mentioned in the email, that I sent yesterday. This book is called Make Peace with Your Mind, and it's by a teacher I've sat retreat with a few times, Mark Coleman. He teaches a lot at Spirit Rock. It's probably coming in here backwards for you, but if you're a client of mine, I've recommended this, so you probably have it. It's a good one to reread. It's got really short, pithy, like just short, easy to digest chapters about little like ways and we can familiarize ourselves with aspects of the inner critic and start to re-relate to it. Imposter syndrome is part of what he talks about. So I wanted to read a little bit of that for you, because every time I read it, I just kind of feel like, oh, okay. And relief feels like relief because it's truth. Truth always, it feels like relief. And so, that's how trustworthy our felt sense is. So this is actually a chapter 3, on imposter syndrome. And I'm going to read that quote that I mentioned in my email from Maya Angelou. If you want to be on my email list and you're not, like you're watching this on YouTube, you can go to karinanickerson.com and you can sign up for the Courage to Shine, which is a free masterclass that will really speak to you if this content speaks to you. But you'll also be, you'll get my emails and content that I don't share with anyone else, but people on my email list. So if you want to stay connected with me that way, do that. Maya Angelou said, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, Maya Angelou, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. I just remembered, right? Do you remember reading When the Caged Bird Sings? It was so helpful to me when I was a little girl reading that. And that was my first introduction to Maya Angelou into like, wow, the dismantling of some of the shame that I think we all kind of carry in different ways. And so he goes on to say, a very common example of the ubiquitous nature of the critic is the phenomenon of imposter syndrome, the feeling that you don't deserve to be where you are in life. It's estimated that 70% of people have imposter syndrome. How many times have you been in front of a class or asked to give a presentation as an authority on some issue, or invited to perform in a concert, or picked for the best sports team and felt like a fake? Or what about those times when you have gone for an interview where you're supposed to present yourself as a specialist and felt like an imposter? So it's good to just take a moment. Like, we might recall some times here where we felt that feeling, and maybe it's sort of like on the daily. It's okay. Right? Working with imposter syndrome, as I'll talk about more first, is in just normalizing it a little bit, which is why I'm reading this to you and getting that just because you have it doesn't mean you are a fake. As a matter of fact, people who are imposters are fakes. They don't ever worry about having imposter syndrome. They just don't, they don't worry about it. Imposter syndrome commonly appears as the voice that says, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? This voice of self-doubt and deprecation haunts multitudes. And then so here's a little Mara for you. It even appeared to the Buddha on the night of his enlightenment. When I first heard that, I thought, at least I'm in good company, right? So he's referring to the story about Mara, and I'm not going to go into detail here, but look on Tricycle or look on Lion's Roar, type in Mara or stories about Mara, and just read it. Mara visited the Buddha, and in my interpretation is the symbol of this aspect of our inner being. Sometimes it's really helpful to give our inner worlds these images and visualizations can really be helpful in understanding ourselves in this way. And so I love this story of Mara, and thinking about how Mara is in our own lives, this visitor that kind of tempts us with ideas of badness, ideas of we're bad, we're wrong, we're not enough as we are. It's better over here, come over here. So Mara, these are some of the defilements, and Mara represented all of them. And sometimes the Buddha would be visited by, under the Bodhi tree, he was visited by all of them: greed, hatred, delusion. The last one was doubt, very tied to imposter syndrome, right? Who do you think you are? And the Buddha didn't argue. The Buddha just put his hand on the ground and said, as the earth is my witness, I have a right to be here. Basically, he's saying, because I breathe, I don't have to deserve love or to be fully expressed. And he stood and sat in that. I think we're consistently being called to just sit in that certainty that we are okay as we are, that we are good enough. And it's we don't even argue for it. We just are it. And that are it is a practice, right? And part of it is a practice of uprightness, embodiment, recognizing that the confidence that we seek that's on the transformation of imposter syndrome is no farther than our own backbone, right? So part of working with imposter syndrome means coming out of the head center and coming more into the body. Let me talk a little bit more about, I want to talk about a few different aspects, and then we're going to head into our meditation. And in our guided meditation, we'll be doing some of these different things, but some things to remember that I've already mentioned. The first piece is becoming aware. That's how do we work with this? And it's begin again, begin again, begin again, begin again today, right? Begin again today. Start to get some distance between you and what you're telling yourself. And one of the best ways to do that for me, and for, really getting to the root of things, is to get acquainted with when you start to shut down. And what does that feel like? And don't judge it, and realize that it's not your fault that it's happening, that you're shutting down. Sort of causes and conditions come together and create pleasant, unpleasant, neutral experiences, Vedana. And it's important that we don't take our own Vedana personally, but we might notice how we have this sort of unpleasant feeling. And rather than kind of collapsing into it, we might, if we're noticing it, just start to oh, it's here. Just to even start to recognize oh, it's here. Oh, it's here. Myron and I have been doing some really good work with an amazing woman named, she's my teacher's wife. And she's a brilliant coach and therapist. Her name's Diana Bonici. You can Google her. She's probably, anyway. But she's, bringing help, she's been so helpful for me in my own, work now, which never ends, right? And just kind of being more curious rather than judgmental about the ways in which, I collapse, or, Myron, my husband, might investigating kind of this as part of our practice and part of our practice as a couple. So whenever we feel like that bad little girl, for example, it's an indication the inner critic has taken temporary control of the spaceship. We're watching that For All Mankind show right now, me and Myron. So I've been thinking a lot about space, and I think it's kind of in the collective. As a matter of fact, anyway, I'll save that for another time. But yeah, a lot of space stuff coming up in the collective that I've noticed. So, who's driving the spaceship? It's good to know if you've got who's driving that thing. And if we don't know who's driving that thing, you know, it's like we're acting out of the past. And so what we want to start to do is just like notice, oh, okay, I'm kind of in a trance right now. And you can start to relate that feeling of trance to kind of a, you know, it's a call from your heart to heal an old wound. So we want to start to relate to that feeling of collapse in that way, rather than as being an indication that we are bad, right? And I use the word bad particularly because that's my, like the, you know, my feeling about when my core shame speaks, it speaks in that kind of language. You can use whatever works for you, but you want to relate to that as being a call for your heart to heal an old wound. You can realize you're in good company. That's why we come together as a Sangha, right? Part of healing this kind of stuff is coming into safe relationship on a consistent basis. And for a lot of us, including me, that's been spiritual friends, Sangha, you know, and it's totally fine, right? It's usually different from other groups that we might belong to. And we kind of sense that it's a refuge and a haven. And we take refuge in it as a practice of healing. I'll be back next week. And then last is practicing compassion, practicing metta, which we'll be doing in our meditation today, practicing loving kindness. As a practice, right, recognizing that something that we haven't learned is kindness towards ourselves, which is first learned in relationship with our caregivers. But if you know, if they weren't even able to do it for themselves, how could they do it for us? And so we can learn to cultivate it for ourselves and for others, but then another also talking to somebody, like being reflected back to in that way, just spend, you know, being with, and that could be through therapy or through coaching or having, I've always liked like it being clean, right? So I will always have teachers and coaches in my life who hold the space with me in my own healing. And, you know, it's so helpful. And, you know, for a lot of people too with this, it can be the missing piece. And if it doesn't, like if you go and see a therapist and it just doesn't work or it's not a good fit, move on, you know, go to somebody until you find the person that you can relax with. I think more than anything, that's like the first primary, most important part of healing, and then moving from there. Not putting that on the back burner because someone seems to know what they're talking about, which I've fallen into that trap before, and it can do more harm than good sometimes. We're going to take some time now to settle into our meditation. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your donations. These talks and meditations are freely offered, and your donations really make a difference. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Those of you who send me those Venmos and those PayPals, and I really do appreciate it. And thank you. You can do that, Zelle, PayPal. I'll drop a link here beneath the YouTube video. You want to get your body right into a comfortable seat. So I'm on my chair right now. And so sitting away from the back of the chair, if you're in a chair. So you can come into the uprightness of spine that I want you to start to relate as integral to really being there for yourself in this way. Like sitting, having some backbone and feeling into what that's like. And as we're coming into our practice now, just kind of sensing that as a refuge and a resource, the unconditional uprightness of your spine that's there even when your like back is hurting. Energetically, we can kind of sense it. But if the back is in pain, then it's appropriate and compassionate to have a meditation posture that doesn't feed the pain. So sitting or lying down or setting up supports, all appropriate here, so that your body can be alert and comfortable enough. We're not checking out, we're checking in. But we're also gathering awareness. So we're bringing our awareness to, we just use our breath here. It's really helpful in the beginning, these first few minutes, to settle, to let awareness settle by just letting everything get really simple and just letting it sort of be with our breathing, the felt sense of it. How it expands the throat and the chest and the belly. We can even orient to however the breath might be feeling good. Like it can feel pleasant to kind of drop the burdens that we often carry of worrying and second guessing and gaming out, all of which become impossible when we're being with the breath. So we sort of short circuit our tendency towards unhelpful self-preoccupation. So we'll spend the first few minutes here just coming back to the breath, noticing when attention kind of wanders away, and just bringing it back to the breath. And I'll be quiet so you can just sort of let that happen and tend to that aspect of our practice. Anything that takes us away from the breath doesn't really need our attention. So just bring our awareness back. Even if we do it 10,000 times, it's fine. Just keep sinking awareness back. You can soften your belly and relax your chest. We're not forcing the mind to settle. We're just giving it an opportunity to, trusting that it will and it does. start now to just bring awareness in a more guided way, or taking the aperture of our mindfulness. If you'd like, if you want to just continue with your Vipassana practice, then in that way, just being in the silence, and feel free to mute me, kind of just sit with us. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying. But if you want to explore more here through guidance, we'll bring awareness to Vedana, or feeling tone. So just whatever awareness might be noticing in our bodies. Like, and my awareness is drawn in my body towards a kind of a feeling in my chest and in my throat. I would actually, the Vedana is, in my experience, unpleasant. And then we sort of notice that, and then you can come back to your anchor. And then apply sort of care to Vedana that we're noticing, whatever Vedana you're noticing. There's no way to do this right or wrong, however it's happening for you, you can trust it's right. But as we just practice with awareness in our bodies, we can sense wherever awareness goes, is that pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? And if it's pleasant, we can also practice like kind of caring, savoring. If it's unpleasant, we can practice just kind of caring, just an acknowledging of like, ouch, compassion. You can even bring your hand, like I just am noticing that I did on my own. You can bring your hand to whatever Vedana that's unpleasant is being noticed. Vedana isn't your fault, nor is it your victory. It's just happening. There's a lot of Vedana that we don't notice because it's neutral. When it's noticed, it might slip into pleasant or unpleasant pretty quickly. So we can notice that too. Don't analyze. It's not what we're doing here. We're just touching, noticing the Vedana. Coming back to soothing breath as an anchor. In this vein, we're starting to bring mindfulness or awareness to inner tone. We know that so much of communication happens in the way we say things, or the way we non-verbally respond or are responded to. So we can adjust, like the dial of a radio or something, or whatever, change the podcast. If we can just tune it towards kindness, like we can kind of tune it towards care, the inner tone, kind of playing with what it's like to just try on a way of being with ourselves that is reflective of a loving, unconditionally loving voice. Sometimes it's not even so much our own as it is like sensing that, or you can borrow my visualization. I like to, as I'm doing now, imagine that I'm resting in the lap of the archetypal mother. I have an image of her in my mind's eye. The feeling I have is that she just loves me and she strokes my face. Even though I doubt her love, she just keeps stroking and being there for me. If visualization isn't your thing, then just resting in the body of ease, resting in the body of care. Whatever helps you connect to kindness and the possibility that all of you is worthy of love and is loved. You can even allow your addictions and your defilements to be cared for by the beloved. can always relax. As we come to a landing place here in our sit, you can trust in what my teacher calls completion without regret, meaning everything in our practice unfolded and is unfolding exactly right. It was good practice. Just because we sat. Remembering this invitation from Serena Sargadatta. All you need is already within you, only you must approach yourself with reverence and love. Self-condemnation and self-distrust are grievous errors. Your constant flight from pain and search for pleasure is a sign of love you bear for yourself. Thank you for sharing your practice with me. I want to just mention a few things. If you feel I would love it if you would put in the chat, anything that stands out as like a takeaway from our time together today. And I will have I'm having a day-long retreat again at my home on September 17th. And one of the things that we're going to be doing inside of that retreat, working with metta and working with metta phrases, singing metta phrases, I'm going to have as part of our time together. The amazing Adriana Manfredi will be joining us to help people like me who don't really, I love singing, but I'm just not, I don't. I'm back now. I got cut off. Am I back? Can you see me? Okay, good. Did you hear me say Adriana Manfredi? Did I get that part across? Okay, so she's going to be here. She's actually sings for the LA Opera. And I just really enjoyed incorporating more singing into my own practice, but I don't necessarily, I've chanted like bhakti phrases and things like that, but what really aligns with me are metta phrases in English, which is like, because that's the language that I speak. And so it really resonates with my heart because I understand what I'm saying. And for me, and I know I'm not alone, I know I'm not alone, that really matters. And so although I'm totally open to chanting other things too, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that, it's just not, it's never been particularly medicinal for me in my practice. What has been is, so we're going to be you're going to get to create your own just simple chant, metta chant that you can take with you to your own practice and add it to your practice. And we'll be sitting together too and exploring a lot of cool terrain, walking and sitting meditation as well. So that is happening on the 17th. And I'll have the link for that this week, so you can sign up. I'll be back next week. If you have a request for a topic you want me to share, I'm really open to suggestions. You can email me at thethrivinghealer@gmail.com. All right, takeaways from our sit today. Anyone want to put that in the chat before we close? or you can say it out loud.
Well, I guess I realized how uncomfortable some of these feelings are for me. Like, just, like I can be on the phone with my sister and saying bad things about the other sister. I'm like, maybe I'm expressing something. It's so hard to know. Anyway.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad, Ruth.
Yeah.
You know, it may be, and it makes me, I think it'd be useful to talk about right speech. Because right, yeah, 100% usually, it's we're projecting. Or we're using it as a way to relate to it. I mean, come on now. I mean, if you don't gossip, relationships for some of us can be very challenging because people are so used to relating that way. So if you don't do it, it's kind of like, where do you belong? Another reason why it's so good to have like a Sangha and a community to come to. Alan, it's a constant practice to revisit our own discomfort and self-doubt. Yeah. It is a constant practice, isn't it? Isn't it? Your practice isn't wrong for that feeling. It's like, right. And I feel like
slide backwards.
What was that?
It's easy to slide back, right?
And good, Alan, too. And I want to point out that, 100%. And I know for me, and you can probably relate to this too, it's easy to slide back into thinking that we're not making progress, or that, that we're somehow kind of not enough, in whatever variation that is now, because now we have an idea of who we should be, right, as like a practitioner. And so I like to, Matthew Brunsilver, who's an amazing teacher. I've done a lot of work and training with him over the last 2 years, and I highly recommend him. And he doesn't do a lot online, but he does do a lot through Spirit Rock, and he also is at UCLA or YouTube. You can find him on YouTube. He says, I find him particularly helpful for like advanced practitioners. He's helped me a lot, with my mental traps. The goalpost keeps moving as we grow. And so it feels like we aren't making progress. But in fact, we are, but the progress isn't linear, right? So it's sort of opening the mind around what that means, and the fact that we'll never feel like we're there. Like inherent to the path is we'll never feel like we're there, because we are always, right? We're always growing, we're always expanding. Speaking of space, right? It's just a law. It's like you can't help but expand and grow and change. So yeah, good. All right, thanks for joining me. Thanks for your donations, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, so to speak, and be well. Blessings. You can take yourself off mute and say goodbye.
Thanks, Karina. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Lydia.
Thanks all.
Good to see you, Ruth and Alan and Belinda. Yay. So good to see you here.
See you next time, everybody. I'm looking forward to next time.
Good. Bye.
Thank you.